Welcome to Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. 3 people are slain in northern British Columbia, and 2 teens are on the run, sparking one of the largest manhunts in Canadian history.
It is literally a needle in a haystack that you're looking for.
3 different areas where there was caches of ammunition.
There have been all kinds of rumors today about different sightings. The local chief is telling people to keep their doors locked.
The water was rising at this point. He noticed a raven in the sky, and he said, "This is a sign. We should go look in this area."
Here now is Jules Knox with part 2 of the Manhunt.
Port Alberni is a city of about 20,000 people on Vancouver Island. And in the summer of 2019, just 3 days before China Dees and Lucas Fowler were gunned down in cold blood, 2 of its residents, Cam McLeod and Briar Schmigelski, quit their jobs at the local Walmart. Briar told his dad he and Cam were leaving town to look for work elsewhere.
He texted me, he said, "Dad, Cam and I are off to Alberta to look for a job. I'll talk to you later." Well, I texted him right back and said, "Well, just a minute." It was kind of a spur of the moment thing in my mind, but it wasn't something Briar was talking about then and there. It was something he mentioned, well, we're going to save up some money and go next summer.
And then all of a sudden he's like, "I'm going now."
Yeah.
On Friday, July 12th, the 2 childhood friends packed some basic belongings into Cam's red Dodge pickup truck and camper. Police say the teens bought 2 guns, one at a small retail store in Port Alberni, the second at Cabela's in Nanaimo.
They were virtually unknown to us as police, had never been charged criminally, and were overall just good kids.
RCMP soon learned that Briar had just been rejected romantically by Cam's sister, and Cam told his girlfriend he had no plans to return.
Cam texts his girlfriend, "I'm never coming back ever again."
Around 5 in the evening on Sunday, July 14th, the teens stopped at a gas station in Fort Nelson and bought food, a cowboy hat, and gas before heading north. At some point in the hours afterwards, Cam and Briar encountered their first victims, an American-Australian couple in a broken-down van.
The back window of the panel van was shot out. The body of a woman and the man, later identified as China Dees and Lucas Fowler, were found outside of the van. It looks like they may have tried to run from what happened because some of the shots had come from the back.
There was never a dull moment with China. You know, she kind of lit up the room, and she was just like a sunshine.
It's hard to put into words. She just brought a lot of joy to our family, and Lucas is such a smart young guy. They helped me paint my entire house last December while listening to Christmas music, and it was just the funnest couple of hours.
The cold-blooded killers would be hundreds of kilometers from the scene of the crime by the time the bodies were found. They passed through Liard Hot Springs and then Watson Lake. By 4 p.m., the teens were in Whitehorse. Briar bought a 20-liter jerry can from a gas station, and Cam texted his family.
They did indicate to their family that they were having some vehicle issues.
Just before midnight on Wednesday, July 17th, a driver stopped to nap along the Alaska Highway.
They pull in, nose in, towards his truck. One young man gets out with a rifle, walks out to the tree line, and then is seen walking back along the tree line and then crouching towards his truck. He used his spidey senses and paid attention to his intuition and got out of there. And thankfully, probably saved his life because of it.
We never knew that they were suspects in a murder. They came in obviously for the free coffee. It said free coffee. We have signs everywhere. If they would have slept here, spent a couple of more hours here, our community very well could have been the community that this ended up happening in.
Leonard Dick, the much-loved university instructor with a passion for seaweed studies, would be found murdered the next morning.
He probably pulled over to sleep for the night. I don't know if it was that he pulled over in that place. I don't know if they got him to drive around. There's a lot of things at the scene that I'm kind of curious about, but don't know how things got there.
There were 6 crime scenes connected to Len's death. And the trail of clues started with Cam McLeod's smoldering truck.
Nearby, there was a coffee crisp bar and some rubber gloves that they were seen purchasing at a gas station, I believe, in Dees Lake.
While police were investigating the incinerated truck, a passerby stopped to tell officers there was a body in the ditch 2 kilometers away. It was Len, although because they were slow to release a sketch, police wouldn't know that key piece of information for days. Len died from a single gunshot wound, but someone had inflicted a number of injuries on him first.
What we can say is that there was a marked difference in the amount of violence that was used in the Fowler Dees homicides, and then the subsequent killing of Mr. Dick.
That it was more violent.
Right.
A beer can, zap straps, and 4 cigarette butts were near Len's body. And RCMP said that along a 50-kilometer stretch of highway, there were other scenes connected to the murder too, including a nearby dumpster set on fire and an outhouse with a trail of blood.
At that point, they were saying they were just concerned for the young men because they were missing.
At this point, we're looking at them as missing persons.
But immediately I knew that they were going to be the suspects. It was like, okay, they burned up their car, they took our car, and off they went.
But because police waited until after the weekend to release the sketch of the 3rd murder victim, Len wasn't immediately identified. So by the time officers learned of his vehicle, the teens had a 3-day head start.
There was worry. I think there was worry for all the people who were in these areas they were traveling through, because you don't know what could happen next.
Coming up, more close calls as police are in a desperate search to find the teens before there's another murder. Welcome back. Police plead with the public for help in finding 2 missing teens before realizing their role in 3 cold-blooded killings. We now return to Jules Knox with the Manhunt.
After Cam McLeod and Briar Schmigelski murdered Leonard Dick, they traveled east. The teens made a pit stop in Vanderhoof, buying a crowbar and electrical tape before traveling to Alberta.
These muddy ruts proved too much for the SUV that Cam McLeod and Briar Schmigelski were driving across Alberta. Their RAV4 got stuck here in the mud the morning of Sunday, July 21st. That's when a local resident, Tommy St. Croix, backed up his truck and pulled the pair's SUV onto solid ground. They introduced themselves and shook St. Croix's hand, but he had no idea they were on the run.
At that point, neither did police. They still thought that the teens were simply missing. On Sunday, July 21st, Cam and Briar arrived in Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan. And the teens had altered the look of Leonard Dick's stolen SUV with that electrical tape they bought in northern BC.
There was black racing stripes that went over the hood of the car and onto the back tire. They're seen stepping outside, the RAV4 is in the background, they're seen walking through the aisles of the co-op. Looks like they're just regular kids. They didn't buy anything really extravagant and then walked out and drove away.
The teens continued east, stopping at a gas station in La Ronge, Saskatchewan, and then the McDonald's in Thompson, Manitoba. By Monday, July 22nd, they had made it to Split Lake.
They went to a reserve that had a liquor ban. So they had a patrol, right? And they searched the vehicle for liquor bottles.
They actually came through the check, didn't stop initially, but then ultimately stopped. The band constable had an interaction with them, sort of seeing what they were doing.
They seen camping gear plus a few maps, but again, you know, not knowing the status of them, they assume that they're again tourists.
The band constable saw the camping stuff in the back and were allowed to proceed, but I mean, looking back now, I'm sure that he thought that that could have gone very differently.
And that made the news because RCMP did not tell this patrol to be on the lookout, right?
Split Lake, Manitoba, Monday, July 22nd. Stopping at this gas bar for $20 in fuel. Employee Michelle Keeper alone when the murder suspects came to her till.
Cam, that's the one with the mustache. He was like quiet and keeping his head down. He seemed, I don't know, like, they just seemed normal.
Keeper had no idea who the men were. Neither did the rest of Canada, because it was the day before the RCMP declared the teens murder suspects.
Monday, July 22nd, became a turning point in the investigation. Around the same time the teens were filling up with gas in Manitoba, a key witness who knew Cam and Briar went to RCMP. They warned police the teens may have been involved in the murders. 3 hours later, Helen Dick saw the news and called police. She told RCMP her husband was likely the latest murder victim, and investigators should be looking for his stolen Toyota RAV4. By then, the SUV was in a ditch in northern Manitoba, engulfed in flames.
At that point in Manitoba, we hadn't received an official be on the lookout message saying that this vehicle may have been involved in the homicides. Had they known, I imagine things would have rolled out a lot more quickly.
The burnt-out vehicle was found on the edge of a quarry, and police would later find stashes of ammunition less than 600 meters away.
Police actually attended the burnt-out vehicle that night. Do you think that the teens were lying in wait?
I do, yeah.
Why do you think they didn't shoot?
The distance between where the vehicle was and where we located these ammunition points was actually quite far. I know that they had high-powered rifles. However, they wouldn't have had a clear vantage point unless the police had gone into the sand dune area.
And so it was just luck that nobody happened to walk into the quarry potentially?
Yes.
We received the bulletin on July 23rd that prompted our Gillam detachment commander to advise that on the previous day, he had actually had a burned out vehicle that appeared to be a Toyota RAV4. We immediately deployed a number of resources to the area to shut down the roads and to have a control and a choke point.
The RCMP are now considering Cam McLeod and Briar Schmigelski as suspects in the Dees Lake suspicious death and the double homicide of Lucas Fowler and China Dees.
I'm standing on the exact spot where the two fugitives abandoned their vehicle and then apparently set it on fire. You could see the wide area here that's been scorched by the extreme heat.
We didn't think that they would actually surface in northern Manitoba. Dead-end road, there's nowhere to go.
The mosquitoes will torment you day and night. and they'll eat you alive until literally your eyes shut and you can't actually see anything.
I mean, you're going into polar bear land and lands of swamps that eat you.
We didn't know at that point whether they had come to the area, stole another vehicle, were out in the woods on foot, had found a boat and navigated through the river, hopped on a train to Churchill or to some other locations.
Any sign of anything suspicious?
My focus now as the incident commander was around how do we protect the community of Gillam and how do we keep them in the woods if that's where they are.
After the break, a trail of clues gives police hope they will find the fugitives. Welcome back. After the teen murder suspects are spotted near Gillam, Manitoba, a new tip has police rapidly redeploying their resources. We return now to Jules Knox with the Manhunt.
As the military landed in Gillam, Manitoba to help track the missing murder suspects, the world learned more about the two teens now on the run.
They hung out all the time. Briar was always at Cam's place, or they had a few other close friends, and they'd have their campouts and all that. They had told me that the Walmart jobs just weren't cutting it. They were going to go to Alberta and make some proper money. I believe that's what they were going to do, and I was absolutely flabbergasted to learn that 2 days later, and I found this out from the paper, that they were up in the Yukon. But initially, you know, it looked like they were victims as well.
Briar's dad, Alan Schmigelski, has had his own struggles with homelessness and mental health. He said his son had a troubled upbringing since his split from the teen's mother when Briar was quite young.
He was very isolated. He was with his computer and his YouTube. That's all he had in his life.
All the parents are saying oh, it's not them, they have such a bright future, they look like good kids. People are they don't look like they'd be a criminal, but what does a criminal look like? He would say things about how he would cut our heads off, and then he would take a gun and put it in his mouth and shoot himself in front of us. I know it's sad if it is someone we knew and grew up with, but could be anyone, I guess.
Police have confirmed they're investigating photos of one of the two murder suspects. Global News obtained these images of Briar Schmigelski wearing army fatigues holding some sort of rifle. Another photo shows a swastika armband with a knife that has the inscription "Blood and Honor" in German, which was a Hitler Youth slogan.
Meanwhile, the search stretched on for days. Communities in northern Manitoba lived on edge, concerned the teens were hunkered down, lying in wait.
At one time, we felt this is the safest place on earth, and it's taken away from us now.
Overnight, a Canadian Forces Hercules aircraft patrolled overhead, using technology designed to find someone in the woods. Door-to-door canvassing of the town continues as well. Gillam has been taken over, this town of less than 1,000 people taken over by police, by the military, an influx of media from all over the world.
It is literally a needle in a haystack that you're looking for.
When we talk about the ground search being conducted by members of the RCMP, they are paying particular attention to paths like this. We're not far from Gillam itself, and you can tell that it is quite a wooded area. But there are paths that have been created throughout this region, particularly for the hydro lines. So that's one of the areas that they're paying attention to, hydro line cuts as well as rail lines.
On July 28, 2019, 6 days after the last confirmed sighting of the teens, RCMP received a tip that they had been spotted in York Landing, a community about 3 hours southwest of Gillam.
There have been all kinds of rumors today about different sightings, but this one, to be sure, is one that the RCMP is taking very seriously. They've deployed by air personnel to this area. The local chief is telling people to keep their doors locked, and the reality is they got a tip that they consider to be highly credible, and that tip coming from members of the Bear Clan. These are people who are going out, not involved in the search per se, but people who were going about and discovered at the local dump something that didn't seem quite right.
We just happened to be doing one last run, and we seen two individuals that fit the descriptions of the BC suspects. One person had like the green camouflage, which kind of gave it away. I was scared.
I've been seeing a lot of vehicles on the road, SWAT team with guns. That's scary.
I guess red herring, so to speak, that we ended up having to follow up was York Landing. We had deployed resources, put them in helicopters, sent them over there, and searched the woods, and it turned out that it was likely bears that were searching through the dump.
A lot of disappointment here, I have to say. 24 hours ago, this big tip came in, and the RCMP mobilized a huge operation from here in Gillam.
The first discovery was made on July 29th. 3 different areas where there was caches of ammunition up on a bank. So if you were walking through there, you would be looking up. The best way to describe it is positions of advantage. And it looked as though the ammunition was just placed on the ground, and then the bags were opened up so that you would easily be able to grab ammunition from the packaging. There was 2 locations right when you come into the quarry, and then there was a 3rd location that it looked like they may have camped out at, where we located it looks like an old army duffel bag, a bag of half-eaten chips, the license plate for the SUV.
Were you surprised when ammunition was found less than 600 meters from the burnt out RAV4?
Yes. Yeah. And you know, it kind of puts you on your heels a little bit that we have been searching in these areas, knowing that they were armed and dangerous, but you know, you put that in your head, but when you see that and you put that into your perspective while you're searching, it becomes even more heightened. So we believe that at some point they were in those locations, either waiting for the police to attend the burnt vehicle or waiting for the police to attend and start searching. The next major discovery was the next day. We were moving towards the Nelson River, and we located footprints on a riverbed.
But despite that discovery, the next day, police announced they were scaling back the search.
It has come time to reassess our deployment of resources to the area. I know that today's news is not what the families of the victims and the communities of northern Manitoba wanted to hear.
The backpack was found on August 1st, so that would have been the next day. The backpack contained Cam's driver's license and wallet, clothing, some matches, camping type gear, a knife, some headlamps, mosquito repellent. It looked to me as if either one of 2 things, it got too heavy and he just put it down and walked away, or something happened and they heard us coming and decided at that point to get moving quick.
Coming up, as officers try to catch up with the fugitives, aerial search reveals a damaged boat by a fast-moving river. Just as RCMP start to scale back the search for 2 fugitives in northern Manitoba, investigators hone in on a new lead. We now return to the manhunt.
Police and the military scoured 11,000 square kilometers in their lengthy search for the teen fugitives. Yet key clues nearby weren't found for a week or more.
Those areas were searched initially, but we didn't find what we found later. It is so dense in there, you couldn't see anything. Like if somebody was standing beside you in the bush, unless they called your name, you wouldn't see them.
Police were searching from a helicopter and they spotted a damaged aluminum boat along the Nelson River, not too far from where I'm standing right now.
When the boat was found, it was overturned and the sand and ground was covering the back and the front of it because it was bent and it was upside down. And it looked like it had probably been there for some period of time.
At the time, your gut feeling wasn't like, oh, this is our smoking gun.
No, definitely not. One of our members that was in the helicopter with me saw the sleeping bag on the side of the bank. We went back and got a boat through Manitoba Conservation to go take a look at it. The water was rising at this point. One wrong move and your boat's flipped over. That's when we found the sleeping bag, a water bottle, and the toiletry bag. And it looked like they had shaved in that location. There was hairs left in the bag. You could just tell that it had recently been used. It's quite possible that the water came up on them so quickly that they had to get out of there. The Nelson River is very dangerous. I jumped off the boat, grabbed the stuff, took the picture, and got back on the boat, and we were gone.
On August 7th, 5 days after the teen sleeping bag was found, officers went out in a boat with Billy Beardy. He's an Indigenous man from Fox Lake Cree Nation who also happened to be the first to report the RAV4 fire to police. And he knew the Nelson River well.
We started getting to the fast water, so we only have like split seconds to actually see what we see. All of a sudden we come up this one ravine and this raven jumped up. Any kind of like bushman knows that if there's a raven there, he's eating something. And we spun around and sure enough, as soon as we got to shore, then we seen that one guy there for sure. It was a small creek that kept coming out, but there were willow brush in front, so we didn't even see the other guy. Till actually we got off the shore and walked up a bit, and that's when we seen they were both there.
This morning, at approximately 10 a.m., our CMP officers located 2 male bodies. We believe these are the bodies of the 2 suspects.
RCPA never actually did tell me my son was dead. And I think no other father should have to experience that.
As a community and from the perspective of the city, we are just incredibly saddened by the news. I think we had all hoped that we would get answers, and the answers that we'll get will be much more limited now.
It's about time. Glad they got him. I hate to say it, but dead or alive.
So far, it looks like everybody's really relieved and able to finally go about their days without having to look over their shoulders.
The teens' bodies were found approximately 8 kilometers from the burnt-out RAV4.
If you look at the route from where the RAV4 was found to where the bodies were found, they should have been found in the 5 days. They should have been found.
BC RCMP not releasing any details on how the suspects died. You know, everyone wondering, was this a murder-suicide? Was it animals or something else? We just don't know at this point.
A few days after the teens' bodies were found on August 7th, police said they died by suicide.
I was incredibly angry at the boys when I found out that they were the cause. I had incredibly violent and dark thoughts pointed at them, and when I found out that they had taken their own lives, and that was kind of end of story. It kind of just washed out of me. There wasn't a point anymore.
When they did find the young men and that they were dead, I was so relieved because it meant that this whole stuff wouldn't keep getting pulled up again and again through a trial. I really felt that the families of the boys had suffered enough.
You want to talk about one of the toughest things ever? Try and read your own kid's autopsy and look at it and say, whose body is this? It was so wrong.
When we found the suspects, it was clear that they had likely died in the first 3 or 4 days of being in the woods.
A digital camera belonging to Mr. Dick was also discovered. It contained 6 videos and 3 still images. In the videos, the suspects took responsibility for all 3 murders. They indicated no remorse for their actions, as well as their intentions to potentially kill others. The RCMP has chosen not to release the videos. The videos may influence or inspire other individuals to carry out a targeted act of violence, essentially creating copycats.
There's 3 different incidents that happened where RCMP did not contact me. They did not contact me when they released that my son was missing. They did not contact me when my son's body was found. And they did not contact me when they had a video to show next of kin.
In each case, we identify a family contact. We were sharing information to the family contact in hopes that the information would get to whomever they felt was appropriate.
You're not communicating with a dozen different people, but in this case, when the family is estranged and it's a biological father, why would you not just communicate with both sides?
We were in regular communication with Mr. Schmigalski, but he wasn't always reachable at the same time.
I called RCMP, he says, well, I'm his dad, can I see the video? No, you're not next to kin, we already showed it next of kin.
He felt that as Breyer's father, he should have had access to the video, and I agreed with him, but the RCMP was denying him access.
What's your reaction when you hear that police are giving access to the video, the last will and testament, to one parent, but not the other?
I found that very surprising and, quite frankly, inappropriate. I do think that Alan was treated differently by the police. He was very vocal in the media, and that set him apart from the other parents. So after a great deal of negotiation with the RCMP, I was able to draw up a non-disclosure agreement. We viewed the video at a secure location. We were allowed to simply watch it, but no copies were made.
When the teen fugitives made the videos, they were trapped by the elements, earth and water.
On one side, they had a very fast-moving river, extremely fast-moving river that they could not escape, cross, swim. And to their backs, they had a very steep embankment that they were able to traverse down, but could not get back up.
But on a map, to the fugitives, the Nelson River looked like a possible escape route. According to police, in the first video shot on Leonard Dick's stolen camera, the teens said they planned to march to Hudson Bay, hijack a boat, and head to Europe or Africa.
The first video, they claimed responsibility for China, Lucas's, and Leonard's deaths, but gave no reason as to why they had. And in a following video, they were preparing for their own deaths. But then the next video, they said, we're going to get out of here, and when we do get out of here, we're going to kill again.
They were cold, they were remorseless, matter of fact.
The team said that after killing more people, they expected to be dead within a week.
So they shaved their heads, they shaved themselves, cut their hair and their beards in order for them to be clean shaven for when their bodies were found. It was determined that they weren't able to get out of there and had made the decision that they would take their own lives.
The teens say the final video is their last will and testament, and they want to be cremated.
And the police show you how many videos?
1. And just a portion with my son in it.
It was a very, very emotional day. It was really difficult to watch. These are 2 young men, as you can imagine, were in a very distressed and highly emotional state. And the video definitely left a lasting impression with me, and it's not something that I'm going to forget anytime soon.
It was one of the toughest things in my life. I can say that.
Coming up, police release a final report. Will it offer a motive for murder? Welcome back. After killing China, Lucas, and Leonard, and fleeing more than 5,000 kilometers, the teen fugitives are found dead. That left many wondering, why did they murder 3 innocent people? We return now to Jules Knox with the conclusion of the manhunt.
In late September, police released a final report on the murders of China Dees, Lucas Fowler, and Leonard Dick.
It is believed that McLeod shot Schmagelski before shooting himself in a suicide pact. We uncovered no information that predicted or forecasted that the homicides took place in northern BC. There was no indication that these were planned or predicted.
10 hours after the bodies were discovered in the dense brush, they arrived on the tarmac.
We have no evidence that leads us to identify what the motive was. If there was, in fact, a motive, it's gone with the accused.
I personally believe that the motive was they were hurt in some way through their lives, and they weren't able to fix it.
I think what's important is what was done, not really in this case why it was done. I don't think there's any possible motive that would make me feel any better.
What happened to Leonard Dick? That's blind rage. Why should any teenager have that much rage in them? The violence from the video games, the violence from YouTube. This is going into our kids' heads.
Police say none of the victims had been sexually assaulted.
We don't know why they chose China Lucas, why they chose Leonard Dick.
I think it's very interesting that after Len, they didn't hurt anybody else. They only took their own lives. I know they said they were willing to kill a lot more people, but they never did.
This pain never goes away, okay? I just want to be hanging out with my kid.
Alan says he's still fighting to see the rest of the videos his son made.
Due to the fact that there won't be charges and there won't be a judicial process here, there is no positive obligation on the RCMP to release really anything. I think that one of the important takeaways here might be, access to firearms. Also access to community support. If these 2 young men were struggling in their youth, it's important to look at how perhaps the state or somebody could have interjected at an earlier stage in order to prevent this tragedy. And also to control their access to weapons.
I didn't raise a monster. I tried to rescue a kid. And the whole system failed him. The whole community looked the other way. People gotta keep their eye out, because Briar and Cam could have been anyone's neighbor's kid. And this is why it was so gripping, because every state, they're just the boys next door.
One of the things I really felt with the young men is that my boys could have gone that way as well. My boys struggled too. I could really relate to those young men, and I felt so bad for them that they had chosen to do this. And I feel it's not a reflection on their families at all. The families should not feel guilt for the way they raised their boys. It has nothing to do with that. It's those boys' decision to take lives. Why they decided to do that, it isn't important. What's important was that they did it. And I feel they'll face the consequences of that.
If you could speak directly to those families of those boys, what would you want to tell them?
I grieve for them. I do. I feel so bad because I feel like the families of the perpetrators of crime tend to get blamed so much. And I feel for me, I grieve. I grieve for the loss of their children. You have the loss of the innocence and then the loss of their lives.
And I do appreciate that. I apologize. I'm sorry for her loss. I'm sorry for everyone's loss. But 5 people died, okay? 5 people died, and this should not have happened.
How were you able to cope with the grief?
My faith is very important. I know a lot of people say thoughts and prayers, and it often doesn't feel like it means very much. But I knew people all over the world were praying for me and our family, and I felt the support of those prayers.
It wasn't till like a year or a year and a half later that it kind of really clicked that he was dead, and that, yeah. And I'm gonna miss our long drives and just talking about philosophy and where the world's going and stuff like that. I miss him.
I want people to remember my dad as a person who loved a great many things.
His real love was seaweed, and that's what he did his research in, his master's and his PhD.
And he loved music, which is, I think, the thing that I really, really bonded with him over. Whenever I find a new piece of music that I think he would have liked, I think about him, and I get pretty sad.
Len did pen and ink drawings. We brought a picture of a person standing by an old barn, and it's complete except for the face of the person. He had a hard time doing faces, and he always would leave them kind of till the last. But it also was a symbol of how we put things off, and when we're gone, they're not complete. For us, it symbolizes the space that's been left with losing Len.
There's still a hole, and I think there's always going to be a hole. You know the hole's there, and you have to walk around it, but it's always there.
Lucas lived a life that many of us envied. He didn't just dream of travelling, he worked and saved and made it happen. He met the love of his life and was at his happiest. We're so happy that Lucas and China found each other and had such a great time travelling together, meeting new friends, and just milking every last drop of fun out of life. They laughed and loved and touched the hearts of everyone they met. We so look forward to having China in our family. Her mother tells us that China wanted their kids to have an Aussie accent. With time, there will be fewer tears and more laughter. Our dear China, we can no longer hug our boy. Please hold him tight. You are in our hearts forever.
Cam McLeod's family has largely remained out of the spotlight and did not respond to our request for an interview. As for the victims' families, the focus now is not on how China Deese, Lucas Fowler, and Leonard Dick were killed, but how they lived their lives, remembering their light and quest for adventure. I'm Anthony Robart. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat. Want more episodes of Crime Beat? Listen to the Crime Beat podcast now for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. And for past episodes of Crime Beat, go to the Global TV app, visit globaltv.com, or check out our Crime Beat YouTube page.